right, the story so far, we just finished the 1793 year, and it has been a good year for France. They managed to destroy the Austrian and Prussian armies that came in from Germany. I cheated a little bit, but they managed to take on the Schwans and destroy them, getting rid of one of the internal problems. The Austrians are responding by sending Wormster up towards Austria. The French have conquered Palatinate, Baden, and Cleves. Baden is now a minor ally. Palatinate and Cleves have been absorbed into French territory, for whatever that's worth. They've got an army operating up here. The Prussians are sieging, what is that, Mainz? Yeah. And the army of Spain is over here. I'm avoiding hitting Flanders because I don't want to bring the English and Spanish in. Not sure what happens. 94 has some special rules. Spring diplomacy, they have to make a check to see if they stay at war with France. Well, Prussia might leave, but the big question is, can Spain decide to abandon the war without fighting it? It feels like that's not reasonable. But it's every year that they're going to be making this check, and that's fine. France is actually poised in a position where they could actually challenge Austria and try to knock them out of the war without getting the Brits in here. There is a bit of a problem to this. This scenario only goes to 1797, and I have to meet my victory conditions, which are somewhere. There we go. Have to conquer Austria, Prussia, and Britain. I assume not having to conquer Prussia once they've left the war, but then here's the other thing. Every fortress in their 1792 territory, all of Flanders, all of Holland, Switzerland and Geneva, Piedmont, Genoa, Lombardy, Romagna. I'm capturing stuff that doesn't help me. If I knock Austria out of the war, I don't know if that helps me either. Like, it helps me, but I don't know if that gets me victory immediately, because Britain isn't in the war, but that's left as this big question. If I keep Britain out of the war, Prussia leaves the war, and I defeat Austria, did I win the game? I don't think so. So I'm kind of aiming at stuff that's not really helping me, and I feel like I have to figure out a way to get these important things. I have to get into Italy for these, Switzerland as well, but then there's the Holland and Flanders thing, and yeah, that's not trivial. I mean, Holland and Flanders would be really, really easy to take. And maybe I need to concentrate more on the Italian campaign before I go there. Anyway, that's it for now. I have less than an hour until raid, some stuff I can do to get ready and just chill out. And then, you know, I'll be back, I don't know, maybe Sunday. Well, it's still Saturday, barely so. And I've bathed and have raid playing by itself. But I guess it's time for me to start the spring interphase, the events phase. We got the new cards in the deck. We didn't shuffle it because the French get to paw through it from the Committee on Public Safety and draw an extra card from that. So they can choose something. And probably one of the strongest things to choose is a public event, because That way I can at least shield myself for a turn if I draw another public event. However, I'm not terribly impressed. I don't see a single public event I want, to tell you the truth. So I'm going to grab the Rothschild card, which will give me 2d6 money this turn. Well, if I play it this turn. Which could be very, very helpful. Given that my two armies are in pretty good shape. Well, see, the problem is there aren't enough counters for 3 armies. That's the real problem. Unless I denude all my garrisons, which maybe I'll try to do. I don't know. A third army would definitely be helpful. It gets 2 cards. Let's see what we got. The French get the Terror. Not something I particularly want. And defection, the coalition can choose any. This is not a public. The coalition can choose any French army leader and remove it from the game. A new army leader is then appointed. The French player may put any enemy non-army leader back into the leader pool. Can't see why I'd play this. Feels like it probably should be a public event. And perhaps a play once. I don't know. But as it is, it's stuck in the French hand and it isn't going to do anything. But I am going to have to play the Terror, which I don't want to do. And here we got Art of War. An army leader gets a +2 combat bonus or can play a second tactic without a second leader or a casualty check. But they also get the directory, which is kind of cool because it gets rid of the Committee on Public Safety, or of Public Safety, but it will prevent the Terror from being an effective thing. So right away, the French government is basically, looks like it's on the way towards skipping the Terror entirely. What do we got left for the coalition? We got the White Cockade, which is useful. Weather Gauge and Winter Campaign, neither of which have been terribly helpful to me. But yeah, we're going to have to play the directory. So basically, the Terror is going to be canceled, but also this kind of useful card for the French of the Committee of Public Safety. And now we each have to do one of the public events. Well, we each have one. And honestly, I'm not going to worry too much because everything's going to get canceled out, essentially, here. I don't know if we actually had a Terror. I think we slipped directly. I mean, the Committee of Public Safety is the Terror, but it's gone away rather quickly, and it's going to be kind of bad for France, I think. That's going to just put us to the economic phase, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this time. I think I'm going to break, though. Get downstairs, check my raid, and fuck around with other stuff for a little bit. So as we start the economic phase, the tricky thing at this point, and I'm going to do these in diplomacy order, I guess, is everything isn't matching the 1792 scenario anymore. And this is going to be the case with the campaign scenarios and everything. I have to worry about these transfers. Now, Palatinate, Baden, and Cleves, none of them really added anything to anybody else's income. So, what we're going to see is Palatinate and Cleves added to the French income, and of course Baden is still a minor power, which gets to produce its own troops, perhaps. So, not too different from before. Forgot something. I have to reset all these at 0, except for the Brits. The Spaniards were already at 0. I'm figuring out what they're going to spend. And again, that factors in with, well, if I'm not going to build an army or something, I probably want to buy all my strength points. because saving money kind of doesn't make sense. Now, it can be used for diplomacy and stuff, but in this scenario, it doesn't really feel valuable. In Spain's case, stacking limitations, etc., are making it so hard that I actually built an army, which means I don't get to build as many troops as I wanted to, but I'm just having trouble getting, the forces under commands, they'd just be spread out all over hell and creation. Whereas I can have a 16-step army. It does give away my best leader, but that's okay. Much as in Empires and Arms, Prussia just doesn't have the money to rebuild its army. I built 4 corps. I can't afford the army if I do that, but if I buy the army, I can't afford the corps. So I'm left in this kind of ugly position. If the French go hard on me, I think Prussia just kind of falls apart. Austrians build an army here at Salzburg, which is within Austrian home territory. Looks like it's its own little province, but that's okay. And got myself a big force together there. But, yeah, so the reason that I had forces split up in Prussia may have had to do with stacking limitations and the commanders and whatnot. So that, I found myself having to build an infantry in Berlin because I don't have an army. So I can only stack a maximum of 6 steps over in Magdeburg. So although you could build a whole army in Salzburg, the Prussians couldn't afford an army, so they can't build that many forces together. There is some danger in terms of losing leaders. Oh, shit. I forgot about my replacement leaders. I got to rethink the leaders. Yeah, in terms of losing leaders and not being able to command all the steps that you have. So an army might kind of dissipate due to that. I made my way through the Austrians, like I kind of was showing, but I had to reposition leaders. Well, I had the opportunity to, because of these guys who are coming back at the end of the year. I'm going to take a break before I do France and Britain. This is just very fatiguing. Up here as dawn is breaking, I guess. Built another French army. Army of Italy down here. I switched the Spanish army to the Army of the North because it just makes me happier to do things like that. It doesn't really have any effect on anything that's all the same value. Shuffled my leaders around, and I have, for the most part, 2 full armies. Germany and Italy. The Northern Army I couldn't fill up. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It's a little short. My armies only hold 12 as opposed to the 16 that the big Prussian and Austrian armies can hold, which is my disadvantage at this point, right? Of course, it doesn't matter much because Prussians and Austrians are so low on troops, I guess. I don't know. We have, I think, full armies here. The Prussians are so low on troops. But these armies tend to be sufficient. The 10-point army, why? Because I was not sitting in a fortress. So I'm only allowed to add 2 steps to it. So that's what I did. I feel like there's some pressure on me at this point where maybe I have to go into Flanders, but that army wants to take this first. I recovered my fortresses. There's an interesting factor about the fortress recovery. So, talk about this in a moment, but when you capture a fortress, if a supply point or a combat point are not spent during the reinforcement phase, the player will be able to produce a garrison point. In the interim, put a fortress removed as long as this is not done. Okay, that makes it sound like you can put those troops in at any reinforcement phase. But if we look here, fortress garrison counts as a combat unit. which means it counts against, in this case, France's 16 CUs max. I took care of that now. I'm not sure you can reinforce with forces on the board. I'm not sure that you can rebuild a fortress like that just at any point. But here's the weird thing. A supply depot is not a combat unit, yet you can convert a supply depot into a fortress. So it feels to me like the $2 should be allowed to re-garrison a fortress. Yes, you could commit a detachment or whatever to it. I kind of feel like fortress garrison shouldn't count as a CU because of other things. I don't know. If it doesn't, I had another detachment I could have built. But I wanted to recover those at this point. I still have a few bucks left. I built myself, in addition to the army, I built myself another engineer. I believe I put in the Italian army. I built myself a couple more supply wagons. Well, one more, I think, to accomplish stuff in Germany. And that extra money that can allow me to garrison fortresses. I built my militia. I covered a lot of French territory with detachments. I'm actually putting militia in the armies. Why? Because I can take losses with it and I can use it as a cheaper mechanism for garrisoning fortresses. Although the same cost as cash. But that $5, if I don't use that, that's wasted, so it goes away. Unlike the British get to take that. All right, I guess I do the British turn, British economic phase as well. I'm low on coffee though. Well, I'm out of coffee essentially, and we'll have to switch to tea, which is fine. English, as should be the case, as it is in empires and arms, have tons and tons of money and not a lot they can do with it. Their manpower capabilities, or the equivalent in here, which is the number of combat units they can only produce 6 per turn, 2 of which are cav. So I built myself an army up in Hanover and started funneling some troops into that. Probably should have done that last turn. I bought Dutch, these Dutch shouldn't be there. Bought myself Dutch Navy. I'd already built the Portuguese Navy. I don't know why I had those in Flanders. Once Holland is actually created, it will be both of those. And I have no more navies to build. I could have built another Dutch Navy. I didn't wish to. I have a couple of commanders that I have loose. I'm going to start trying to ship troops into Hanover. Although I'll have to kind of do that via Holland. But that's okay. And yeah, I think I'm done with production at this point. We did reinforcement and replacement. Essentially, within that, that's going to put us to the diplomacy phase when we play the cards, then stack the pool and all that, and start playing turns as they are. But I think I'm done for today, unless I can't sleep or something. It's 1796 diplomacy phase, or sorry, 94. On a 6, Prussia leaves the war. Not this time. I'm still debating. It's obvious that the regular diplomacy rules are in play to some degree in this game. This piece of tape is useless. I keep reusing them. See, this one doesn't feel like it's any better. But The thing is that if the full diplomacy rules are in play, it would mean that France maybe can get England or Spain on their side. And that disturbs me a great deal. Now, France has enough money to do a diplomacy. No other country does. Well, England does, but they're not in the war. Obviously, if I could get England on my side, that would be great. But there's a problem with England. Spain I can get on my side, presumably, using the rules. If I enter Flanders, England is going to declare war on me, regardless of whether they're an ally or not. So I think it still kind of works. So maybe I want to try to play for Spain. Because I don't know what to do with those $5. So let's take a look. $17.4. And we'll worry about alliance credits if, because we will play with that. Ah, fuck, it's not in here. 17.4 is the wrong rule. That's the multiplayer rule. This is going to be in the 11 rules, is the diplomacy that includes on majors, which can only be done at the beginning of the year, if I recall. Well, maybe not. Okay. So it would cost me my $4. I'd roll 2 dice. I don't have another $2 available. I'd have to get a 12. It doesn't seem worth it. But there are other possible effects. The Spain counter. Spain has a bonus, but not in this scenario. Or France has a bonus on Spain, but not in this scenario, so that's not going to help. Like an 11 might be worth it. Yeah, I don't see it. Are there any minors that would help me? Denmark might be kind of cool. Minors, I get to do for free in diplomacy order. We didn't do this last time because we kind of ignored that these would be in play. It's a 2-player game. Only one roll gets made, I think. See, they say each player, and there's only 2 players in this scenario. Oh, each player, either a blocker or major power played by a physical player. Yeah, so there's less diplomacy available. The French go before the British, but the Austrians are the player power, so I'm going to say the Austrians have to make first choice. And they can utilize the Prussians, I guess, for their bonuses instead. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense. I don't think it's a big deal that I didn't do diplomacy last turn, because the chances are so, or last year, because the chances are so low. The only country I could find that Austria wanted to play for is Denmark. Now, Poland is in the game and is an option, but Austria has a penalty on them. Poland might be of interest to the French, who have a bonus on them. I have no extra money. We have no DRM on this, and there's no other modifiers in play. So if we had gotten a 12, we would have gotten the Danes on our side. Not a terribly big deal. Now, the Danes have a bonus for the French, but the Poles have a bigger bonus and are actually really interesting. So we're going to try to push Poland. There's no date on this. At +2. Is it worth spending extra money to do this? Maybe. So I think I'm going to spend $2 because I just don't think I'm going to use the French money. I'm not going to send an extra embassy out. I don't feel like I'm that rich. And that gets me down to, what, like on an 8? No, on a 9. We don't get it. And I'm not going to spend any more on that. And I think that gets us to the beginning of a normal turn. Build the initiative pool, blah, blah, blah. Shit, I forgot the inflation card. I got to take 10 points of production off the Austrians. Got the last land phase. I drew here, got a neutral land and an empire land. The neutral land, I moved some Brits up to start transporting forces over to Europe because tensions are increasing. I probably should have done something with my Spaniards. I don't know. I'll go back to them. And then I drew an Empire Land 4, which means that the French have a few stacks they can move, and maybe some key ones because the siege under play here, and I got a couple of 4s near there. My leader down here is only a 3, and I have another 3 over here. I only have one 4 army leader at this point, but I have a 4, I guess, corps leader on the board as well. I actually got my sleep schedule, it's Sunday, somewhere where I kind of like it. I went to bed maybe a little too late, but it was like 1 p.m. when I woke up. That's something I can play with and work a little bit earlier or whatnot so that I can actually do some stuff. Plug in my battery for being able to do some yard work and things like that. But what I really ought to do is, first of all, get stuff so that I can fix my toilet. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's running, and that's going to cost money. And also get, maybe be able to get clothing or something, because I'm running out, although I am losing weight. That may just have been going so long without shopping. The first thing is I took my Keebler elves out of Strasbourg, I think, oh no, Baden, moved down to Strasbourg 2, 4, 5. I cheated. We couldn't have gotten that last battle. Okay, not without a... I counted it coming out of here, but I was actually too far away. Okay. So let's get back here. This was here, and the leader was not injured. Okay. I moved him out of Strasbourg. Out of Baden, 2, 4, 5, and won a very close battle, breaking the siege that was there and driving them away. I didn't have enough movement without doing extended movement to get that second hit, and I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have chanced it. The big thing was getting the siege out of the way and driving those forces upward. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing with this second army here. Now, as to the entrance of England, this is kind of interesting. Let's look at the campaign scenario, how Britain and her allies join immediately, or if France attacks or besieges Antwerp or Brussels. Well, you can't besiege Brussels. So I could hold off, move through Brussels or hold it, siege Liège, but Antwerp I would have to actually siege. But maybe I want to go siege Liège instead and start positioning myself for taking Flanders over. I think they come in, Britain and allies join the coalition immediately through diplomatic action event, okay, or if France attacks or besieges Antwerp. That sounds like Britain just becomes part of the coalition at that moment. That's a little fucked up because they've already gotten a land movement phase. But that is how the rules are written. So this unit will have activated and they can do a second action and whatever. And that seems okay to me. I was a little worried that the immediate entrance wouldn't make sense and they'd have to come in during the diplomatic phase, but I don't think so. I think they can just join the war in the midst of a turn. I don't see much problem with that. So I got to be a little careful with my French. I probably don't want to bring the Brits in too early. With their shit tons of money, though, they're a little scary. Given that wording, I think it might be possible to knock Austria out of the war, gain Flanders as a peace condition, and not bring the English into the war. If we look at, I know it's not under diplomacy. Major powers. I would have to take Vienna and either Budapest or Prague. This is national territory, cannot be a key province as long as other eligible provinces are available. I don't know what key provinces are. I still do not have an answer to this. This is a problem. I think I need to pull the PDF open and take a look. Yeah, I think I can take Flanders because that's national territory without actually having conquered it. Simply by conquering Austria, which makes 100% sense. And in terms of my victory conditions, what things do I want? Well, see, I have to attack Holland, so at some point I have to go to war with England. Because my peace conditions, or my victory conditions, and again, like, I don't feel like I've defeated Britain if they never entered the war. My victory conditions are somewhere. Flanders, Holland, Switzerland, and Geneva. Yeah. Not an easy thing. Not an easy thing at all. Now, Geneva just stands alone, so I can just kind of declare war on them and grab them. They worth anything? Yeah, I could absorb them and they're worth $1. That doesn't bring me to war with Switzerland or whatever, but I have to take Switzerland for the scenario, so no reason to have special rules for something that's that trivial. Interesting. I don't think it's worth trying to knock Austria out of the war. And the other thing is, Prussia could leave the war on their own, in which case, I don't think I've defeated them. They've just sort of accepted, you know, a status quo peace at that point. For the second activation, I activate the army down in Cologne. It moves up, threatens these guys. They manage to get a withdrawal. I go for it. But they're kind of pinned against neutral territory. So they have to withdraw into Flanders. I don't have a lot of movement left. I stop. I besiege Wesel here and successfully get a breach on a very high roll and end up just overwhelming the fortress, because it's an army against a fortress. So it's pretty easy once you get the breach. And so the French have had a pretty good turn off of sort of their worst shit. However, I did move a couple of my forces, but I do have another move with each one if I want to risk attrition. And I guess I'm going to break for a bit there. I'm low on tea and stuff like that. Came back up because I got a definition of what a key province is. Not in here at all. I don't think the word key province or key city shows up anywhere. But, and little red stars, automatic victory city, those are the key cities. Provinces that they sit in are key provinces. And there's X number of them. It's going to be kind of a pain to pay attention to that. Because, so this has a star here, but it's 1805 to 15 only, I guess. Where am I? I'm having trouble finding where I am. Yeah, at Antwerp, it says that in red. It doesn't really say what it's 1805 to 15 on, but I'm guessing I can absorb Flanders from Austria, even though it will be a key province later in the game. It's a very, very, like, it's just hard to believe that this is stuff that showed up in the errata, right, before this second printing. That's what Banania's rewrite is. It's incorporating all the errata and putting the rules in much better shape. And honestly, if you don't mind doing print and play type stuff at all, like just printing out the rule book, or if you don't mind working off a PDF, I think that fixes, that rule book seems to fix all the issues of the rules. There's still component issues that I have with the game, but outside of that, somebody asked me, so far this is looking like, the only thing that I would say is a direct competitor to this is War and Peace. And this is looking like a better solution than War and Peace. You know, a hex-based maneuverability, grand campaign Napoleonic Wars game. This feels like it plays a lot more believably so far, and it also feels like the mechanisms that you use for maneuver and whatnot are more aligned with the reality. War and Peace feels like it has some really weird shit going on in it. The thing that I like about War and Peace, or liked about War and Peace and wanted from it, is to give me a little bit more detail in the maneuvering and whatnot that Empires in Arms and all these, you know, area and point-to-point games don't really give. Well, this gives it. You know, this gives you that maneuver capability. Of course, being, you know, pre-World War I, the armies are kind of loose to travel on their own. They're not, you're not looking at contiguous lines or anything like that. So it has kind of a feeling a flavor that feels similar to things like Civil War or whatever, in terms of you're maneuvering to control key general areas in this, which is why the area control point to point actually works pretty well for these kind of games, is because your force is actually probably spread around more than it shows up on the map and all kind of stuff like that. Now that's one of the things both this game and War and Peace cover, though, right? They allow you to kind of spread your force out a little bit more, but I don't know how much advantage you really get out of it. For example, in both games, you have a 1 hex kind of interception and reaction capability. Well, what that means is I can intercept you if you're close. You know, my army might be spread out over, you know, a little 2 hex radius or whatever, or 3 hex, really. Two, what is it? Not radius. 2 hex radius, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, 1.5. 1.5 hex radius. But the units on the, you know, that are out on the picket, if they intercept you and catch you, the rest of the army is not going to be able to do shit about you. And that same kind of core issue affects War and Peace as well. Now, obviously, look, I'm not going to just be having a cluster all around everything. What I'm going to probably have is a line that's along the river line or something. But I'm going to have, you know, I'm just not going to have the capability to react any great distance with my army. And that's probably reasonable in terms of the footprint that the army exposes. But in a way, I kind of don't need to spread the army out, except maybe for attrition purposes. That's certainly the reason you do it in War and Peace. Got a Coalition 2, which is their second best. I pulled back a couple of Prussians. I don't really want to start the engagement yet. I'm hoping for a better opportunity. So I didn't move my Italian or Austrian European army. The army of what? The Rhine, yeah, forward. And on the French 2 turn, which comes a couple chits later, I pushed forward here into Picardy towards this fortress. Again, I don't really want to force march. Well, extend movement or whatever. I also don't want to advance with my Italian army yet. I feel like both sides are kind of playing for a let the other have to make the first move and then be able to react. But chits are kind of running out. And of course, winter quarters could come up. Boom, boom, boom. And it's starting to get tight now. These coalition landmarkers got pulled, but a couple of winter quarters got pulled in addition, which means we're almost ready for the turn to end. It could happen at any time. The Empire landmarker, they feel like they're going to have to make their decision to move forward at this point. I can't risk pulling, you know, that last winter quarters at this point. I need to get things done. The coalition, not so much. Get their 3-point activation. They choose to push their army of Italy in, and it just basically runs through the pass. It was a battle. It was like 3-1. But, you know, an army with all the bonuses that it has, lots of artillery, more chance of cav, although actually the cav advantage went entirely for the Austrians this time. They had cav, the French did not. But they wiped out the enemy force. The leader, Gesco's just back in the pool. I did use a leader who took a loss, so I lose Valence here, which kind of sucks, but you know, there's a reason not to bag leaders, actually, because I'm gonna probably play the 97 scenario and some of the others as well. So, or 98 scenario. And some of these leaders will probably be available for that I've lost or whatever. So I got to be kind of careful about not getting everything put away at this point. But anyway, yeah, we pushed our way through this northern pass. I don't know what the coalition can do. I could pull this force forward. One, two, which side am I on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to Lyon. That might not be a bad idea. These fleets at Marseille, though, that's not even a fortress. Why am I building troops there? All right, let's get out of there before I confuse things, because I thought I was in a fortress. I don't want to be in Toulouse, because Toulouse has a nasty event on it. And, you know, I hear rumors of that event in the future because I know about the deck and whatnot. Even if I was playing for the first time, the French have the opportunity to go through the whole deck from the beginning of the game. So they know what the cards do. They have, like, you know, seers or whatever. But yeah, my hope was that these things would kind of slow down the advance. Not much. There was an attempt to withdraw, which was part of what affected the combat results. But the main thing was the French rolled really, really well with a big bonus, like, I think +6. And the Austrians rolled really poorly with a moderate, like a +3 or something. That is something you can keep in mind in this game, is that the combat table, using 2d6 for each side, it can be pretty variable. You could win battles you don't expect to and lose battles you don't expect to. So there is definitely that facet, but the army goes in with a big advantage. Yeah, numbers and, you know, the artillery that you have, the extra cav that you're likely to have, all kind of stuff like that really makes it a lot easier. Maybe the last important activation this turn, the Austrians get the Coalition 3 marker. I move the main Army of the Rhine up here to Ulm after dropping some forces off so that I could pick up the forces that were there, which are better. And I move Wormster's Italian army up into these woods. There was an interception possibility, which would have sucked because then I'd have to fight in the woods with the interception bonus for the French, but that didn't happen. So I've got kind of the worst, my strongest force to defend Italy facing that army. These can't really help reinforce because I'm full, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Might be able to pull some more forces in. Yeah, I can actually pull some more forces in. Let me do that. I want to get more troops facing that French army. It really can't afford to withdraw back and try to find another way through. And then there's, of course, the question of, hey, do I want to move into Toulon or whatever? So I haven't finished this activation. I thought I had, but I think I'm going to take a couple more actions. This is one of the advantages of grabbing the video is, as I explained what I did, some Prussian shifted around too. I could have forced marched with some of them, but I don't feel like the French armies are going to force march. Yeah, I could get caught or something, but I don't feel like getting caught in the open is that much worse than getting caught at a fortress. I feel like I just have to keep withdrawing. And I don't know, I'm looking to try to preserve my forces more than anything else, really. And that makes life kind of difficult for the coalition here. The Austrians, they can face the French, they think. I mean, they have as much of an army as they're going to have, basically. They're able to rebuild pretty quickly, unlike the Prussians. Fortunately, the Austrian force here wasn't able to siege Toulon in any reasonable fashion. I wouldn't have supply. So I pulled everything I got back here. Wormster has a much larger army. I'm letting these Venetians sit here. If I get a 1 activation, they can get out of there. But unfortunately, the last winter's quarters came, well, fortunately maybe. the last winter quarters came up, so the turn ends. Yeah, there would have been a coalition 1 left, so that I could move small forces around as well. Can't be too upset. I've gathered my forces. This is the best I think I can do with the coalition at this moment. And, you know, the French are being the French. They're kicking butt. I don't think there's any attrition checks, so we just remove the activation markers, and I take me another little break and figure out some way of making myself miserable. In the next turn, I do the diplomacy phase. I've started playing it now, right? So the Austrians did their shot on Denmark again, whatever. But the French did a shot on Poland. Didn't pay this time because I'm going to need $2 to restore this at the very least. But, you know, it feels a little dangerous, right? Like, I've got a 1 in 12 chance of bringing Poland into the war every turn. That feels a little extreme. It really does. And I don't know. You know, it appears diplomacy is functional and active. Obviously, I don't want to spend the kind of big bucks to try to play around with Spain or whatever. But Poland, I got a big advantage on. I was going to do a naval operation to try to bring the English over into Holland. But neutral land came up before neutral naval, one right after the other. And that's a problem, because under naval transport, to be carried by naval unit, a land unit must already be in a friendly harbor or port. The land unit must disembark before the end of the activation phase. There's nothing that says you automatically disembark when you enter a harbor. Which leads me to believe I can't do it if it's in this order. This isn't a big problem when you're actually in a war, because you'll be using either the coalition or empire chits. But not in a war. I feel like I'm constrained and can't actually ship my troops over easily. That's okay, I guess. But, you know, it is a little annoyance, essentially. Here's the thing. I forgot who went last. I think it was the coalition. I knew when I was pulling those chits, but just this little bit of distraction of, you know, having to look up a rule and everything, I forgot that little aspect. Again, I think the coalition did the last move, so that's fine, but in fact, I'm pretty sure they did. But you can see where I gotta do something to kind of record that. Maybe put a control marker or something just to indicate that, yeah, you know, this is the country that's due for the next move until I start getting chits out. The game doesn't, the components don't support it as is. Certainly there's workarounds though. Of a similar fashion, I got the Empire Land 3 move here. I see another situation that's much like it. Like I want to go siege Boulogne. I go 1-2, right? Then I got to spend 2 to siege at 3-4. But the thing is, there's the possibility of movement after combats and all kind of stuff like that. So again, you're going to need to mark how many movement points you spent. I've been kind of doing that, or remember where I came from. But you saw where it caused a problem over here where I got in another battle where I shouldn't have been able to. Again, just sort of there are games that have like a movement point track or stuff like that just to support this kind of functionality. There's nothing like it in this. In addition to taking this, which I left ungarrisoned because I didn't want to spend points for it, I don't think I'm going to lose this now and I can buy it back, you know, later. I took Castle in Hesse. That one I did spend for and garrisoned it. Not costing me combat unit points somehow. Everything's just so weird in this game. But again, I could be using depots for this, right? I'm trying to decide what I want to do in terms of other advances at this point. Palatinate is owned by me because of this marker. It's kind of confusing. Ownership of territory versus ownership of cities using the same damn markers. It's just clunky. It's just clunky. It's hard to assess the everything that's going on type of situation. Yeah. And there's no winter quarters in the summer. I've got the chit in there. I'll just remember not to utilize, if it comes up, just put it aside. But I threw it in there accidentally, which is no big deal. Now, if I want Berg, I have to grab Frankfurt and leave a garrison there. But I've got a while to do that still, because I'll only take it come winter. So I may want to keep my forces kind of operable. This is a move 3, so I can only move like my commanded forces. I'm trying to debate whether or not I want to push into Italy now or later in the turn. It's a hard call. The later I do it, the less the Austrians have a chance to react. But the more capability I have to push my advances further. And I'm a little worried about time, not terribly. I know that I need Piedmont, Lombardy. I think I need Romagna, probably Tuscany. But I also need Switzerland. And this army kind of has to take care of all of that. One thing that I've been considering with these leaders that I pull out, I might try and extend each scenario from the last one, thus sort of creating a real grand campaign instead of the scenarios that are actually in the game. Definitely am thinking more about that for the ones that happen in the revolutionary period. So like, I've got this scenario, this campaign ends in 97. I think I have a 98 or 99. I think there's a 99 scenario. And then there's an 1800 scenario, which is a little different. The one problem I have with that is some leaders would die of like old age, essentially, or retirement or whatever. So I've got like the elder Kellerman, who's pretty old. I've got, there are other people who are pretty old too, one of which just died, which was Brunswick. But he didn't actually die until 1806 in battle. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, when I put him in the box, I started thinking, it would be interesting to keep playing Onward. And I don't know, it might be quite possible to do within the confines of things. We'll see how the scenario setups look like, because I don't know. Part of it feels like it depends on how close together the two scenarios are. But there's a year gap between these two. I really wish that and I don't think it would have taken that much more work, something which allowed you to run through the entire thing. The problem, of course, is the fucking Egyptian campaign, which makes so little sense. So little sense. A game without Egypt in it, right? If I was playing EU, or without India in it, if I was playing EU, taking Egypt would at least have a really, really powerful strategic value for France, because it puts the threat, we're talking about a point where I think Britain is still at war with France. Well, they must be. Britain is still opposing France, but they don't have any allies. And France sees, yeah, it's going to be really hard to invade Britain, but if they're defending Britain with their navy, we can try something down in the Mediterranean. The amazing thing is that France rebuilt the navy between the Egyptian campaign's end and 1805, when Napoleon was preparing to try to land in England again. We had the Keebler Elves slide up this way. Again, could be intercepted by this, but that wouldn't actually help anything. Up here at Wurzburg, and the battle actually ended up, the French had like a +3. Note, and I wasn't paying attention to this, artillery and cav bonuses are limited to +1s in the woods. The French have the advantage in this fight, but anyway, neither one did damage, and this is the first time we have the opportunity to fight a second round of battle. The French are willing to. I think the Prussians are going to pull out after one day of battle, because they're at the disadvantage. We want to conserve our forces, and we get a retreat without a chance of being demoralized. The rules on combat consequences, if nothing happens, the attacker may choose to fight a second round or retreat. I wanted to make sure I've got this right. If he opts to fight, the defender then chooses to fight or retreat. If the attacker opts to retreat, he's considered to have lost the battle. Nothing about the defender losing the battle. Now we go, neither has lost the battle yet, and if both sides decide to fight, the second round is resolved. The defender has not been forced to retreat. The attacker has lost the battle and must retreat. The retreating side is the loser of the battle. Question is whether this applies way up to the defender retreating. It feels like the defender has an opportunity, and this is how I'm going to play it, to withdraw after one day of battle. If the attacker chooses to withdraw, he's given up that advance and has lost the battle and may be demoralized. I don't feel like that applies as much to the defender. 2 rounds of battle, once again, the attacker gets forced back. Now, he will be demoralized if he loses 2 days of, if 2 days of battle go by without winning. But as it stands, the territory was abandoned by the Prussians, and I get to try to siege Wurzburg, because I get the free siege at the end of a battle that I don't have to pay movement points for. Although actually I do have movement points. So let me see. I came from Palatinate, came up here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I would get the free siege. It may not matter because I did fight a battle. I didn't have to pay an extra movement point because it wasn't an overrun, which is just fucking weird. So I would have the movement point for the siege, but I can also end my turn there and get the free siege. I detached my Baden Corps and I managed to take it in an assault, and then I threw the Baden Corps in there so that I have a garrison there, so that it's not trivial to retake. And I'm not worried about this one. I think I'm going to launch this attack as well. It gives me the capability then to like move forces in and reinforce and everything. I still feel like this is a toss-up, but I don't think it's that big a difference either way. I'll bring up a point. So the woods give a defensive bonus, so Wormster is going to fight. They also reduce the effects of artillery and cavalry somewhat, which is cool. But I want to compare the defensive advantage in this to, in tactical games, there's usually no real in the firepower based games. There's usually no tactical advantage to being in the woods. But here, having a forested area, because the scale of the game is different, the idea is that, look, there's a lot of interesting terrain that you can use to your defensive advantage in a wooded area. Whereas when you're actually looking at the direct activities of, like, you know, fire into the woods or whatever, that just, where it happened, it tended to be really, really bloody close range combat. It didn't tend to give the defender any great advantage, though. But I just want to point out the difference between, you know, where that firepower advantage or whatever doesn't really exist. Troops didn't tend to form up just inside the wood line in some sort of broken formation for the most part in order to get some kind of defensive advantage to it. They might pull back into the woods to prevent the enemy from, you know, shelling them at a range. But when the attack actually happened, they probably didn't get any great defensive advantage from it. Yet, where I've got opportunities to utilize the woods to anchor forces, to find defensive terrain and everything, it makes sense. Just like the mountains make sense, right? Be a major battle, so cards come into play. Each side got 2 cards. The Austrians are going to play Skirmisher, -1 to enemy die roll, automatic for France. Others have to roll a die roll of 6, of a 4 or higher. Patriotic Enthusiasm was in my hands. That's not going to help me. Has to be in 1792 national original territory, which I am not. Piedmont is, it's Savoy. Okay, so the Austrians, did they get theirs? This is just a straight die roll, no modifiers. Nope. Okay. So Wormster's not smart enough to use skirmishers. The French are going to use an echelon. I have a panic, which gives me a bonus, a penalty to the enemy's morale check if I win the battle. I'm hoping to do so. But this is an iffy thing. So I'm going to put a crappier leader up as my secondary leader for this. Now I have to roll a 5 or higher. I'm putting a 0-point leader because I don't mind losing this guy terribly. I don't get that, so the panic is not going to be in play either. But I am going to get the echelon. Has to contain at least 8 undemoralized steps with a minimum morale of 3. I have that, so I'm good. So I get an additional +1. Something a little weird here. The line, calculating combat odds. It's just got very little. Each side calculates its combat value by adding the combat points of all units. And this is how I've been doing it. We've got 12 French steps versus, I believe, 16 Austrian steps. I think both armies are full to their commander. Now, normally for a game, an attacker would be counted as 1 to 2 for this. I haven't been counting that. Only the attacker is affected by this. I'm counting it as 1 to 1 because it doesn't reach 1 to 2, right? I don't know if that's right, but otherwise, close forces would very easily provide a penalty, which I'm not doing in this case. This cancels out the terrain advantage fine. We'll do the rest of it. The French are beaten back in a close battle. The losses were a 5 CL for the French, a 4L for the French had no cav. 4L for the Austrians. French retreat 2 hexes. That gives the mountain pass up, but the thing is, I want to make it harder for the Austrians if they come further, so I wanted to retreat that far back. I probably should stick in the mountain pass, but I had to make that decision before I made my demoralization check, and I passed my check. I did lose 2 leaders, dead. The Austrians lost the very good Coburg for the rest of the year. The French moved their forces from Lyon up to reinforce me, so I'm in a slightly better position. I think that's the end of the French activation. Yes, I have other 3-point leaders I could move, but not many. Just down here. But yeah, pretty exciting activation there, actually. Tactical cards, I mean, they're an optional role, okay? They feel a little lackluster, but they do add interesting little twists. Make the, an extra +1 or whatever is a thing. It's kind of cool when you have the opportunities for something, like a better pursuit or whatever, if it comes out. It's kind of cool that they add some stuff like the skirmishers that, like, the nations achieve that capability and become better at it as time progresses. So it's neat. I don't know if they're worth the extra hassle. I don't mind it, but I can definitely see leaving them out. They're not having that huge an impact so far. We hard at the game for whatever reason today. Okay, we got a coalition land 1. Now, that means I can move anything and everything that I want. But I want to focus on Wormster right now. If I move him into here, the French have a chance to intercept me. Since I didn't demoralize them, I would be fighting them in the past that I don't want to fight them in at all. I don't particularly want to fight them anyhow. I think what I want to do is just sit here where I have my own interception capability against them. I let them get too close last time so that I didn't get an interception capability. It's important to try to leave myself that. I don't know why I didn't take one previously to get the +2 bonus for the mountain pass. I don't have an opportunity to rearrange my leaders right now. It's in the middle of a turn. And that sucks because I don't have any good secondary leaders with Wormster. Just a few things to have in mind here. One thing I could do is I could move this force up. I could break a force out, so I can fiddle around with a leader who's nearby, which I probably want to do. Chose to pull his entire force, could have left a corps there, whatever, forward in order to better reinforce my army, get it to a larger size. There's no big threat down here. There's no threat at all, I think. Yeah, not even a detachment down there. And I may actually pull another one of these units in. The problem with pulling the commander and his whole force in, I could have just swapped commanders, essentially. Moved someone else there to take command of that, shifted that commander, and that wouldn't cause an activation. What I did caused an activation to be contaminated on my force, but I'm okay with that under these circumstances. I chose to strip the entire frontier for him. Now, the detachment wouldn't have contaminated me, but there was a Venetian one-step corps, which is essentially a detachment, right, that I pushed up there as well, which would have contaminated me, just like the other force did. But I figure I want everything I can get in there, within stacking limits still. Oh, God damn it. I fucked up royally. I did that battle with the right commander, because the commander's on top, but with the Army of the Rhine instead of the Army of Italy. I have to figure out how to fix this, the whole situation, and I don't know how to do it. See, this is the problem I have with these kind of boxes that just have names on them or whatever. It's just the name ends up covered up and you don't fucking see what you're dealing with. This is one place where I really prefer the core in Empires in Arms, which have boxes that, first of all, they have the name above them, I believe. I'm not positive about that. It may be in the box itself. But also, they're sequentially numbered. So it's relatively easy to keep track of which thing is which. I mean, honestly, that whole battle was just a sham. because I used a 2-point leader from here. The forces are different. I do have Cav here. I don't know. My best to fiddle it around and get it fixed. I replaced Coburg with this guy whom I would have used instead. I used, to make up for that point, I used Grenadiers that were here. So I think actually the results are about right. But anyhow, now I'm launching an attack on Wurzburg, and the French decide to take it as a siege with this force. Now I've spent 1, 2, 3, 4 movement points. I can make 2 siege attempts on them. We don't manage to take it, but if this French army decides to force march, it's going to be fighting me in the woods. When you relieve a siege, the defender is not allowed to come out, the besieged force isn't allowed to come out and sortie against you. It can do it on its own, but it can't do it in coordination. So it's not a terrible result for me, but now I have a lot of other units that I probably want to use, which includes, because I took a loss on my reserve corps on an assault, getting another step of detachment up there. Fall back with some of the Prussians up into Silesia, just, you know, trying to find defensive locations that French army isn't going to wipe me out. But, you know, honestly, it's able to just pick off my, you know, little stacks of 6 steps very easily. And this is the problem. Do I want an army that I don't have troops for, or do I want the troops and hope to rebuild the army? Well, I chose the latter. Either way would be bad, right? Like, I don't want to pay $8 for an army I can't support. Prussia is just open for the taking right now, is the problem. But maybe this will distract these guys. But then maybe Austria will end up open for the taking. But they did a good job down here. All right, I'm going to break because this was actually more intense than I expected this shit to be, mainly because I discovered the error. Almost Monday, but I just briefly ran, I've been playing Raid and fucking around, but I ran through the rest of the chits without much happening because, you know, the big forces have moved and done their thing, right? But I'm coming to a conundrum here. I have, this is my last Empire land chit, and I may move some core around or whatever. But I'm under siege here. Now, next turn in autumn, I will almost certainly get an opportunity for my army to come down and try to rescue them. But I have to take an attrition check. And that's a little troubling. I think I just let it go, but we're looking at 2 steps in a level 1 fortress. So I'm going to be out of supply, which means I guess I've spent 4 movement points or less. I'm not sure. Because I may have moved before, and if I did, I spent more. Well, have I been activated? I have been activated, so I don't think I'll get that 4 movement points or less. I'm out of supply, which gives me a +4. And the siege marker is at +1. So I'd be a +5 on the 2 to 3 table, which means there's a fair chance of like a step being lost. I'm not going to lose more than 1 step. Now, if I move that army, it's 12, okay? It looks almost certain I'm going to lose a step and could be worse. It's in supply, and it might be 4 movement points or less. Probably not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if I want to avoid the river crossing penalty, which I certainly don't want to eat that. Actually, it's 7 because this is woods. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I think river costs 2. Yeah. Ugh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. No matter how I move this, it's going to cost me 7 movement points, which I really don't want to do because I'll have to take the attrition anyway. Now, I think I only have to make 1 attrition check if I extend movement and force march. But it's at +2. Whereas, yeah, I think it's too ugly for me to do that. So I'll just move some core around and hope nothing terrible happens. And then the final coalition shit comes up. No biggie, nothing's happening from that. I guess, I don't know. You know, I don't see anything that the Prussians or the Bavarians can run up to and do anything exciting about. I guess there's Baden. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why don't I move to here? We'll leave the activation off, but that gives me more support against like these detachments, putting a little threat against them. Okay, but now I have that attrition check, and like I said, it was 2 steps out of supply, which is +4. Make it +5. We get a 13, that's a full step dies. But, and it's cav, which is particularly painful because they're more expensive and la la la. But that's the end of turn, and I clean up and go to autumn, I guess. In addition to the question of, hey, did I spend 4 more movement points before I moved into that hex, and does that count? And what's going on? There are some weird things with attrition, right? Because the way it's stated, an attrition check takes place before each battle or at the end of movement if no battle took place. Siege resolutions are not battles. So if I spend movement points on siege, I don't get the attrition until after everything. But if I take attrition in a battle, I could move a hex, fight a battle, win it, and then I think I could extend my movement and, you know, let's say I had 6 movement points for the force, I've got 5 left plus another 3, move 8 more movement points and not have to take an attrition check. And that's what I really hate. There's an interaction here that just doesn't work. And you could say, look, if you were due an attrition check, you know, due to the extended movement, you should still suffer that afterwards, whatever. Okay, maybe, but here's the thing. I could move that hex before the battle, get the 4 hex bonus, right? The 4 hexes or 4 movement points or less bonus when I roll for battle, and then when I roll for attrition I wouldn't have to roll for attrition at the end of my movement, even if I don't extend my movement, right? The extended movement is just to try to make the case worse. But look, I take the attrition check because I'm out of supply, right? That's why I'm taking it, not because of anything else. And yeah, I would take it before battle, get a lesser result, and then I'm like somehow forgiven from having to take another attrition check unless I enter another battle. Oof. All right, so back up here we got the Empire Land 1 marker. This is their, you know, most permissive marker. Everything can move. I definitely want to try to relieve this siege, but it also means that all my detachments and everything, if they're going to move, they're going to do it now, which kind of sucks. And then I've got to think about this. I kind of feel like I have to chance it again. I mean, it's just too hard to get around and find another pass. I could, well, I could have declared war on like Switzerland and put myself up here, but again, you know, the nice thing about Switzerland is that I would be facing I would have multiple passes going into Italy from there. I would have had to do that back in the diplomacy phase. I'm planning on declaring war on Geneva next turn. So I think I just try to push again. And, you know, I'm being kind of clumsy. Like, I have the Rothschilds that could get me a pile of money. I probably should have played that at the beginning, during the interphase or during the economic phase, so that I had more money to build stuff. But I kind of had enough money. Let's do the thing I know I need to do. So I want to go. It's hard to tell if there's a river up there. And my screen is too crappy to really see. Like, I'm getting this. I think there is river here. Yeah, that's blue. I can see that. So that means I would have to go 2, 3, I don't know. So I could go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which would, I guess it doesn't make much difference, you know, if I have to do extended, I have to do extended. 2, 3, river. I have engineers with me. I'm an army. Oh wait, that's not the right army. It's the Army of Germany, but I have engineers with me. I could actually drop a pontoon bridge so it doesn't cost me. So I could go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right up there, drop the pontoon bridge, and it won't, then I don't have to do the extended movement. So I'll do that. 2, 3, 4. Now, he could try intercepting across the river or some such. It doesn't make a lot of sense. A bridge causes issues. What if I come down this way? 2, 3, 4. Yeah, no, it's gotta be through here. All right, let's find the German army. And there should be an arrow here. Oh shit, there's a year on this one, isn't there? I can't see because, again, my screen doesn't show, but the black text on the blue thing, I see a year. It looks like 1805. I don't know if I have another engineer, but I have $8 more if I don't. Okay, I forgot to do diplomacy anyway, so let's roll back to that. The Austrians go for Denmark, whatever, and don't get it. I'll spend 2 of that new $8 that I just found to give me a, I don't remember how much. I think it means I need like an 8 or something. Okay, Poland is going to declare war. Whee! This is a totally fucked up situation. When a new country declares war, when a minor declares war, what does it get? It's not actually specified. It says you set up their units. I guess I get their 1806 production. If there are no Polish leaders at this point, I can just put a French leader in there. So I'll do that. This is during the reinforcements and whatnot phase. But again, I have this shit ton of money because of this stupid fucking can't read the counters. Can't tell that they have a year on them when it's the black print on dark blue. And I can't even see the dark blue band on French counters because it's the same color as the French have. really obnoxious. That should be white print on a black counter. They know how to do white print. They have that technology, okay? Where nobody tests the components in Compass games. Like, there's just no way that that could pass muster if anybody had those components. Somebody brought up an interesting facet, which is that most testing these days is being done via Vassal, actually. I don't know if, you know, this is quite a long time ago. Vassal was around, but I don't know if that's the case. But, like, to make this graphic choice is just so fucking ridiculous. You know, I mean, it's fucking unreadable, the black text on the dark blue background. And it's not even possible to tell whether you have the dark blue background on the French counters and these other dark blue counters. And it's just, you know, it's just horrible. It's fucking horrible. This is among the worst of their counters. They had one God Kings where you couldn't read the text because they chose this weird, like, font to use, you know? And it's just like, yeah, that's crazy. And now this, you know, and then they tend to make really odd choices too. Like, I mean, the Spaniards being brown instead of yellow is one of those situations. I would say the Austrians being such a dark gray is another one, especially when it kind of blends in with some of the other countries. I don't know. They just have no sense of, like, producing components that are usable. Anyway, we go back to where we were, which is trying to make this advance. Well, now I have to play. I have engineers with an army for free. So I have one extra movement point to cross the river. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doesn't help me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the question is, does he want to intercept before I get there? It's a plus in the battle situation, so I think he's going to try. And we'll just take a look at that. He's got you know, I've got to figure out all kind of stuff, but he's got a 3 leadership, and this is the Rhine army. You know, does he have light cav? So I run over and I have to check that. Yes, he does. So that's a +1. Does he have a cav leader? Again, I have to run over and look for the little cav. Yes, he does. He's at +2. You know, this is the problem. He's not crossing. He's definitely not higher initiative. He's lower, so he's at +1. He only has 1 major power present. So now I need a 9 or higher, and I don't catch him. I don't get penalized for this, but the French move in and we'll be able to attack. And this will be a major battle for that fortress hex. But before I take that, I have to take my attrition check. Kind of feel like you should, like, instead of how it's worded, which is a force is out of supply when activated, it takes a check before each battle or at the end of movement if no battle took place. Instead of that, it should be something like, and at the end of movement, if movement points were spent after the last battle. You know? Because you should have to check multiple times maybe. I don't know. The expense seems kind of high in that case. So I've got 12 steps with the French. I quickly look for this. No. I'm not out of supply. It's an extended movement, but not during forced march. I could blow a supply wagon to reduce my problem. I'm going to do that. Wrong army. Again. really have trouble. Oh, does this have a year? Oh, this has a fucking year on it too. Great. Okay, well that's $2 more I get back because I can't see what the counters say. I probably could have bought a Navy or something with all this money I'm getting. All right, we keep looking. We have another train. And you know what's really horrible? There's a number on this side. Yeah, there's a number on both sides. Okay. I just couldn't see. I thought there wasn't a number on the other side. This one has a number on it. That's $2 more I get back. Yay! Oh, this is so wonderful. Fucking invisible shit on the counters. That was in a different army. Let's keep looking. Okay, there we go. Here's one that does not have a number. I'm going to expend this. Much as I'd love to have depots, and I bought them because I wanted them, right? Because I wanted to have, capabilities to drive deeper than I have. I'm in fine supply here, I think. Coming out of here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Because that's not an army zone of influence down here. So I'm okay getting into that. And I've canceled out this zone by going through it. So I have supply there, so I might as well expend the supply to reduce this. Now, what was I at? That gives me a total of -2 on the 12 roll. Oh, I get more, right? I get a leader bonus? I do not get a leader bonus. And we're not... Oh, it's spring 94. I get another -2. That's -4. I think it's still worth it. Especially if I'm going to roll that high. So I get a 6. I'm going to lose a step off the German army. So now I look through the German army and oh, I have a militia. We will kill that off. Because, and I hope it doesn't have numbers on it because this is just getting fucking ridiculous. Like, yeah. Okay. So now we'll conduct the battle. This is going to be a major battle, which means cards come into play. And I'll come back afterwards. Cards. Automatic plus overall commander, that gets me, he's +2, so that gets me to 3. And now I've also hit the military reform at 1794. So, yeah, I'm getting 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Cards. The Austrians had year 2 soldiers, which is a +1 to the die roll. Great. That's going to be my main one. I also played crests with a minor leader. I don't know if the enemy has artillery superiority. I ended up failing to get that card. The French played redoubt, which gives a +1 to the die roll. I had a couple of shit cards. Grand battery, I don't have enough artillery. Grand charge, I don't have enough cavalry. So there's nothing I can do. But you can see some of these cards are canceled. This one is one that cancels. A refused flank. Cancels a flank attack. You have to roll a 5 or 6 to apply this tactic. So I would have had to get 2 shots at it. And the chance of like an outflank or something being the card that the enemy had is pretty low. I got no idea with it. I would not play this card if either of these applied because I don't know what it does. It probably adds 1 to the die roll. But anyway, I failed. Again, I used a leader who is not terribly valuable to me. Although my leaders are beginning to run out. I have decent leaders there. I could have done a shift of leaders. I don't know. I didn't do it, so the hell with it. And now we continue with the normal process for the major battle, which means both sides are at +1. French army got its clock cleaned. It's over here. It's not demoralized. They succeeded in their morale check, but they took an extra hit, and they were actually outpointed in terms of modifiers. And they lost a leader, actually 2. One here is just wounded, but they lost their 300 army commander subordinate that I had, like 3-star subordinate that I was using for losses, which I'm not thrilled about. I would have probably used this guy instead, but again, I didn't reinforce. The Austrians didn't lose any leaders. Cards go away. I know there's things about major battles, something to do with the peace conditions and whatnot. I can't remember what they are. But, yeah, I just don't remember what those are. And now I've got a shit ton of other forces to move, including those damn poles. Army of the North slides over and takes Liege with a pretty lucky die roll, a big 11. Got me the siege roll, that got me a breach, which the attack was an automatic success type thing. I'm going to spend 4 of my money to recuperate that breach, which I've already done, but also to get rid of this thing. I see no reason to leave that removed when I've got shit tons of money. And, you know, now Lille is a fortress again. Now the 2 Italian armies are going to fight again. An interception attempt here failed. Hey, I get to reshuffle the combat card deck. Right now I've got Raid fighting a battle that I just keep losing. It takes, I don't know, like 40 minutes to fight on automatic. I think I could probably win it if I manualed it, but instead I just tweak, you know, some little things and try to fight again, but I'm getting really sick of doing it. Something I didn't expect. I'm looking at the cards the French have. The pursuit losses are lowered by 1 if the defeated force contains at least 1 cavalry step. You kind of have to know what the enemy has to want to do this. Now, I don't have any cavalry, so I'm definitely not going to play that. My other pieces are not very good either. I'm probably facing artillery superiority, so I'm going to play crests as my primary, and I'll probably use panic as a secondary. Look at the Austrians. General's health, -1 to the combat value of the enemy commanding leader. If he has a 0 apply -1, the final combat value also impacts the morale check modifier for the force. This is interesting. I got this by like committing a secondary general or whatever. I don't know. But that's definitely worth doing. It's better than most cards, so that's going to be my primary instead. Cancels enemy cav pursuit if you choose to eliminate one of your cav steps. I mean, it's probably worth chancing, so I'll put a secondary in there. I don't want to put the +1 for that. And the French Army of Italy. Ugh. I don't have any cav. So a morale check is less important to me. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. I'm short 1 too. Interesting. All right, well. Another feature of this game is counting steps is a pain in the ass. So like this Venetian Corps, it's only 1 step. It's not obvious by any means from the front that it is. Detachments say detachment on them, so I don't count them. But to count this, I have to, I have to not only feel whether it's front or back, but in some cases, like with minor powers, I'm going to have to peek at the back. Now this is a detachment. It's another loss for the French. Oh, I forgot the artillery superiority. It would still be a 3-point attack. I got the 3+ here, so. Yeah. Oh no, there wasn't an artillery superiority. Okay. They actually had equal artillery. There was a cav superiority though. But yeah, the French lost an extra step again. Nobody lost any generals this time, but the French have a demoralized army now. That sickness made it easier for that to happen, and this is a real problem. This is why you don't want to attack early in the turn. Now or maybe you do, but the thing is, if I attack on my phase, beat the enemy, they get the next step, which again reminds me of Civil War, right? A system that I really love. Although I didn't like how it was, how it played out in, what the hell is it called? It's On to Paris down there. Another Compass game. That used the Civil War system, but like, It added some complexities that aren't in it. Took some away too. No naval actions and whatnot. At least not that I remember. But I just didn't like the way the armies all worked together. I felt like I don't remember. I'm confusing it with something else that Billy Boy liked, which was Der Weltkrieg. But he also was a fan of On to Paris, and I really didn't like what it did. But yeah, now this is done moving. I can't recover its morale. I could take an extended move to recover its morale, and I probably wouldn't take much attrition from it, because I wouldn't be spending movement points, or many movement points. I don't know where recover morale is. Regroup units is, rally is 3 movement points. I forgot about regrouping. That costs movement points when you pick up units and whatnot. Oops. I've probably been a little too loose about that. Well, I've absolutely been a little too loose. It's probably had some effect. But yeah, now I don't have like a way to recover before he can hit me. So the Austrians are probably going to get a chance to strike me again. And this reminds me again of Civil War. If you have about equivalent leaders and you get demoralized on your attack, there's a very high chance, well, it depends on how the initiative works. It's a little different from this chip pull system. But there's a good chance that you're handing an opportunity to be attacked while demoralized. So you've got to kind of weigh balance the risk there all the time when you attack. There's always some chance that they're going to get an opportunity to hit you. Sometimes it's very, very low if they don't have any command points or whatever, which is a different factor in that game. Yep. All right, let's move the rest of the shit, I guess. Right side, I somehow won that raid battle that I didn't think I was going to win. It had gone too long, and I just didn't think I got it. I looked, my computer says I won, which is a big deal because there's a big reward if at this point that is locked behind me winning that within the next, I can get to it within the next couple days, maybe even today if I overburn energy. Okay, so we've seen 2 French armies defeated here, and we had a French army defeated before in the last turn. This year is not going well for the French. I don't know. And that leads me to the, if the French really screw up this scenario, they may not be in a position to be able to translate this scenario to the next scenarios or whatever, right? Or if they do really, really too well, like knocking out Austria and Prussia actually out. Although that I can handle a little better. The real question is, so let me take a look at what the coalition victory conditions are, because I think there's otherwise it's a draw situation. And I'm a little, has to conquer France? No. Oh, they have to hold on to Flanders. So yeah, if they kind of beat the French back badly enough. I'm going to look up how the first coalition war ended, I think, to help me guide whether or not I can transition to the next scenario. But, obviously, I don't have to do that right away. I do have to swap batteries, though. Regarding the entry of Poland, this is Poland after, it's already been through, 2 partitions, I think. This is the rump of Poland. The Confederation of the Bar was trying to do stuff, but it's hard to believe they would jump into a war. But they do have a lot of demands, and they have demands on Prussia, certainly, at this point. I believe. Nope. on Russia and Austria. So joining the war with Austria against Austria, they've got a shot. You know, East Galicia would be worth taking. Yeah, I thought part of. I thought they had lost stuff to Prussia already at this point, because my understanding was the final partition. Yeah, maybe I'm mistaking things. Maybe it was the penultimate partition, because it's Maria Theresa taking things, which is definitely earlier, kind of reluctantly, with a, yeah, well, we can't allow, Poland to be just divided up. But it's really just a rump state right now. I'm a little iffy about it being able to, being willing to come in any sense. But, there's no restriction in the rules, and I moved them over to the French allies now. So the Poles moved down to Breslau, laid siege to that. They didn't get it. Shifted some more detachments around. I think I already moved these, so I didn't want to move them. Shifted up to Bordeaux here, a couple into here, just to get the reinforcements in place. Now, one nice thing about demoralized forces in this game is they can always withdraw from battle. This is very, very different from Civil War. So I can try to save my army and pull out. So I do get a chance to recover it, which is something that I forgot about as I was talking. Anyway, this is where we've got it. I gotta say, things look pretty ugly for the French. They were looking so good last year. They looked so on the rocks the first year, so good last year, and pretty bad this year. Thing I should really be avoiding right now, but here it is, about 7:30. I tried to sleep for a couple hours, and I guess the video I was listening to was just too exciting. So I made myself some Eggs Benedict, and I got it perfect this time. But anyway, let's pull some more chits, at least get one more activation round. This should be we're working on the coalition first round, which could be quite important, actually. I'm a little fatigued, but whatever. As I moved the Austrians forward, I realized I probably fucked up with the French. 1, 2, 3, 4 would be my supply line, or 1, 2, 3, 4, which means I would have had to leave something, a detachment, something in this hex. The Austrians are doing that. They dropped a depot off, but yeah, that kind of limits me. I'll try to blockade this, but I kind of can't protect all the entrances. I thought, I got the French on the run. Yeah, they move into their hex, they run away because they're demoralized, and this feels a little weird. I feel like, I should be able to hit the army again, but there's already, for demoralized armies, and you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to do the calf pursuit. So I should have hit that with, let's see, this is Italy. I have 2 light cav and 2 cuirassiers that should have hit, which means I should hit 3 steps of the French that I didn't hit yet. Yeah, I mean, I can push his army around, but I can't pin it down a la Civil War and beat the crap out of it. However, those 3 additional steps, this thing is down to 2, 4, 5 steps now. We come up to Wurzburg here, where I conduct a siege, and I got it up to a +3 before finally getting a breach. Now, the breach means I assault once, and then it surrenders. And surrenders is just destroyed. This is the equivalent of an overrun. Not here. not here. Here we go. DRM for the attacker. The weaker side is entirely destroyed. I'm looking to see, this is the same maybe as an overrun. I think the leader doesn't get a loss check or anything. Like there's no opportunity for a loss check because I'm not going to be rolling on here to generate anything. In an actual overrun, the defender is destroyed. Destroyed enemy leaders are placed back in their leader pool. Yeah, so like any siege, it seems like the French leader dodges the bullet, as it were, and is not hurt at all. But the location is taken, and now if I have a, what's Wurzburg? It's in Bavaria. If I have a detachment, I can recover that fortress. Siege, the Austrian army punches down, hits the French army of Germany, and I mean almost obliterates it. But they succeed in their demoralization check. Good leader. They had to roll a 2 or less though, so the hurt was heavy enough. We had a leader knocked out here. And this was not a major battle. The French were only 7 strength points at this point, and their army is just evaporating. The French are really on the run. And, you know, a lot of this is the luck of this 2d6 combat system. Some of it is the quality of the armies themselves, but some of it is just the die rolls that come out can be so variable that you can lose a battle that you thought you were going to win or had a close shot at. Anyway, now we're going to try to reinforce the Austrian army to get it built up, I guess. Although it's possible that Reed could actually beat up. This is only 2 steps now. Problem is, in terms of me sleeping, is I ended up putting on, I guess, I think it's 2 hours, it might be 4, discussion of the Alec Baldwin Rust scenario situation and all the weirdness about that. And it's like, if it's 4 hours, I'm halfway through. If it's 2 hours, I'm probably almost done. For whatever reason, me just like trying to sleep with something like that, quite often I'll fall asleep very easily, but this is something I remember happening and everything, and it came out in bits and dribbles, and I don't really know. And now I'm getting like the whole narrative at once, and somehow it just hooked my attention enough that I couldn't go to sleep even though I was tired. Decided to send Reed after the army. It managed to get a withdrawal, but you know, with only a couple of steps. Destroying an army is a big deal, right? That's an $8 swing in cash, etc. Plus it's an army that wouldn't be available. And then whoever the hell's up there, it's Teschen, isn't it? Yeah. Would be able to basically have free reign against the French and maybe reconquer a lot of stuff. Instead, I started a siege here of Baden, which I did not succeed in getting, even though I had a lot of movement points and got it up to like +3. Got to think about the Poles. They're tough. I don't know if I really want to fight them. Anything would have a chance against them except Hohenlohe up here. I might have another general who's, I got this Kalkruth. I can't put him in now though. I moved some Saxons down to join the army of the Rhine. I just don't think I can cope with this. And so I thought about, hey, I can come down and, you know, take Hesse back or something. But there is a problem. I'm not as free as I thought I was. There's the army of the north up here as well, a third army. Now, three French armies had an initial strength of like 36 steps. The two Austrian armies had a strength of 32 steps. So, you know, you kind of need an army to face an army, but the French armies had a little bit less staying power, and given that they took some defeats, I guess that's what happened. You know, they got their asses handed to them. I kind of don't want to do anything with any of the Prussians, and that means I'm pretty much out of forces at this point, because everything has gotten consolidated. So, I went down to look up how the first coalition ended. 1798 is the Egypt expedition. That, again, that's kind of the problem situation, is how do you resolve like the skip between the end of this scenario and then the 1798. I feel like everything but Egypt could be easily handled in the game. You know, a couple of cards maybe for the political situation in France and whatever. But the France versus England and Egypt is really tricky, and it's going to be hard to step from one scenario to the other. There's another thing that gets in the way. While I was in there, in the first coalition, I found out who Teschen is. That's Archduke Charles. One of his titles is Duke of Teschen, and I'm assuming that because he's only a Revolutionary Era leader here, I'm assuming when we get to this later period here, probably here, we're going to see a better version of him. And, you know, if they're going to use multiple names for a given leader, I don't know where he's going to be. But if they're going to use multiple names for a given leader, it's going to be, although I'm not seeing him. How odd. Because he's only got Revolutionary Band on him right now. And again, if they're going to replace a leader with someone with a different name, if it's just one case, well, now I know about it. But there may be others. Now, I know there's like two Bernadotte leader counters for obvious reasons. There may be others as well that I've kind of caught. Blucher, I'm assuming Blucher has another counter, because over here, well, see, he's white here. But he's rated not as an army commander. I got no idea what they're doing with this game, because, I mean, obviously Blucher becomes, in the much later wars, becomes a very important Prussian general. But with that white print on him and going into 1808, he goes into the non-revolutionary period, which, wow, I don't know what they're up to. On the Charles counter, that comes in at 95 to 09. Now, if he is indeed the same person as Teschen here, and it would make sense, let's read. Teschen is listed as lasting from 92 to 97. So I will have two copies of Archduke Charles. Now he's a 316 one there. Like, he's got a better, he's much better here. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. I just don't know what they're up to in this game. And let me see about the Blucher one as well. Here's the replacement for Blucher. Now, you're not supposed to remove leaders. So like, in the Grand Campaign, In the case of Teschen, I'm not too worried, except for the fact that starting next year, he will have 2 counters on the board. The Teschen counter and the Archduke Charles counter, right? Blücher is a much worse situation because his marker is a white counter which doesn't get removed. Like, I don't have to make anything up there, but he doesn't get removed, but he runs from whenever, 92, whatever, until 08. But there's an 09 Blücher counter here too. Now, obviously he gets replaced, but it's like, how the hell are you supposed to know all these replacements? There's no listing anywhere, you know, of what happens. And if it wasn't Blücher, I wouldn't recognize, and I'd wonder, gee, why do I have 2 counters with the same name? Interesting. And in the case of Teschen and Charles, I'm not used to him being referred to as that, okay, as Teschen. But if it is the same person, and from my brief moments of investigation, it appears to be, yeah, you really shouldn't have 2 counters for him. Now, you could just say, okay, yeah, but, yeah, he might die or something. Yeah, he's not likely to as an army commander, you know? And then, you know, he might just be some unnamed leader who's pretty damn good that the Austrians will have in his place, maybe reflecting staff or something. But it's in a line with everything else in this game. It's like really, really shoddy, like, effort to try to make it work. Spent most of today with my eyes closed just listening to the video, but came back up because, yeah, I'm still awake. Now, the Empire Land 2, what's up with this? Well, there aren't a lot of things I can move comfortably. I do have this force, but I don't particularly necessarily want to. However, I have the demoralized force, and demoralized is particularly interesting. If I reactivate him with a forced march, I can try to rally him. That will require an attrition check, because it's a reactivation. But I'm going to have to make an attrition check anyhow at the end of the turn. So I might as well do it just to prevent this guy. I don't know, because I've got a weak force, right? But yeah, so that would cost me 3 movement points, and if I don't move him any further, that gives me the 4 or less movement points in a turn. So I guess we'll do that. Let's take a look. First of all, he gets rid of the demoralization. He'll hit a second activation. I can't move him again. But then we quickly look down. -1. All movements inside national territory gets me to -4. But he's demoralized. Puts me back to -1. Do I have a supply wagon? Probably not, because I had too many. But what was I at? I was at -1. Give me another -2 because I'm French and it's past that time. So I'm at -3. And this is the Italians with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. -3 gets me a 4, which is no impact whatsoever. Now I can move this force forward as the next activation and get some more troops in there and fill it out, which is important because this weak little force no longer can withdraw for free. To the neutral naval phase next, and this is weird. One way or another, this should be able to work, right? But what's not clear is the naval transport rules, and if I fucked up, you know, we will allow it here as a special case, but let's look at them again. Not naval warfare, that's not where it is. It's somewhere under everybody's movement. Here we go. The naval transport doesn't really indicate what happens. So, see, yeah, this is just so fucked up that they don't give this. So, you can transport combat points plus a supply unit plus any number of leaders if naval combat to be carried. The land units must disembark before the end of the activation phase. It has to start in a friendly harbor or island. I'm, again, not sure what islands you can pick people up off of. You know, again, is Britain an island, whatever. Every island in the game that's playable, I'm sure there's some little specks of tobacco or something that look like islands. No, every island in the game has a port on it. Although some of them, yeah, but that's a harbor, yeah. What it doesn't say is when you get off the boats, okay? And the land unit must disembark before the end of the activation phase. Now, last turn, the land movement happened first. So I couldn't. What I ruled was my boats couldn't pick everybody up and sail them into Amsterdam. Because I wouldn't be able to disembark. Now, another option, though, is that they just disembark when they hit the fortress. For example, here, if the harbor is a fortress, the naval invasion procedure is as follows. The assault units land during it. Combat is resolved to. I honestly think I should have been able to do this last turn. I should have been able to do it last turn because I would just sail in and drop the units off. However, I wouldn't have actually been able to. I need the land movement before I do the naval movement. But because I fucked it up last time, we're going to do it here. I can pick up two per. So I come out 1, 2, pick these guys up, 3, 4 into Holland. I actually have to move this ship out of Holland to have room for those ships to be there. And now they haven't disembarked. And now, if the neutral land comes up, I can move the army here and I'll have the stacking for everything. Last turn, I think the rules are really, if you land in the harbor, you're able to drop the troops off. Just period, the end at that point. In which case, last turn, I would have had to move this army into Holland first, which I probably should have done anyway, to get my Anglo-Dutch army there. Now that can only hold 12 steps though, and I have 2, 3, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'd have to leave a detachment behind in Hanover. But I'm okay with that. I think when you hit the port, you disembark. But I'm not doing it that way this turn, just because it's not clear here that you do disembark. It's not like you're allowed to just disembark from the sea, from what I can tell. if the destination hex, the only hexes in this game are on the board, are land hexes, is occupied by enemy and naval, but I guess the only exception, so the only reason I wouldn't be able to disembark is if I have two naval chits in play. If I chose to make a double naval move on that turn. And I'm stuck at sea with my land units. That's the only case where it doesn't work. But like, reading that had me completely fucking confused. Anyway, we're gonna leave it as it is. If I end up getting winter quarters before I can disembark my entire army, well, the forces that I just brought over, an expensive amount of force for the English, not so much money-wise, they have 79 bucks in the bank, but manpower-wise, they can only build 6 steps per turn here. So the neutral land came up and I disembarked. Again, I don't think that's how I'm gonna ever play it again. I think things disembark when they hit a hex, period, the end. Now, what's also not clear is where I can disembark things, right? Because a naval invasion cannot take place in a hex without either a harbor, city, or an island, which makes it sound like I should have been able to disembark, say, down here at Rotterdam or something like that. I just don't know. Because Rotterdam's got a city, but again, it wouldn't be an invasion, which kind of makes it sound like maybe I can just sail and drop them off anywhere on land. It's only naval invasions can only happen at cities, but maybe something else can. The naval transport rules just don't make any sense. Like, they're not fleshed out enough, you know? And yes, I could go read the Banania rules and see if they make sense. And now I've got the Dutch fleet out here for no good reason. I just don't know. Now I've got another issue to resolve. Empire land, lots of garbage, and then we get to a coalition land 3. Now I've gotten 2 of my 3 coalition markers. I think I keep holding off. I'm considering moving this force forward to besiege Castle, but I don't want to do it till later in the turn. And since I have another chit coming, now there are a couple of winter quarters. So very fortunately for the coalition, there's only 1 chit left. The winter quarters hasn't been drawn at all. We got the coalition land as the last chit of the turn, and that allowed me to march in, take Hesse back with another whole season. Now, yeah, the Army of the North is still up here and can come smashing into me or whatever, but I regained Hesse. I have any chance of getting Britain? No, I don't have any money. I can't do diplomacy on the Brits. And, well, the French wouldn't want to, but the French could do diplomacy on Spain, which is intriguing. And on top of that, Spain has a chit, which gives bonuses to the French, but not yet. Huh, okay. Yeah, I mean, my chance of getting Spain is nothing, basically. It's a 1 in 36 if I don't spend more money. All right. I think this is end of turn. There's no attrition to do because there are no sieges going on. I got the demoralized guy done. I'm going to clean up the chits, and we'll move ourselves to the winter. And what are these English markers for? They were here for the Chuans. Sort of half lie. There are 2 sieges underway. There's a siege here of Baden by the Bavarians and a siege of Breslau by the Poles. But neither of those have any troops in them. Now, here's another weird thing. So the attrition rules, if we look at those, not far from here, attrition checks are taken and During the final attrition phase for demoralized units, out of supply units that were not activated, and besieged units. There are no units in either of those. But what's really fucked up is whether you're in supply or not as besieged forces, and a number equal to the size of the fortress can be in there in supply, you get an attrition check. But the fortress itself can't be starved out, which I don't know. Yeah, like, fortresses certainly could be starved out at this point. And if you take a look, you could kind of argue, well, those are the honors of war results, maybe. I don't know. But they don't really fit that. The honors of war is generally, there's a breach, and the defender says, I've done all I can. I don't want to suffer an assault or whatever. Or we've lasted out so long or whatever. The truth of the matter is you could starve out a city, and that's not covered in here. Again, I think War and Peace handles this better. I like the movement and the way the forces operate on the board better in this than I do in War and Peace. The naval manipulations in War and Peace feel a lot more reasonable, because so what you have here that fucks with your capacity to like land troops somewhere and create a beachhead or anything like that is that you have these really weird stacking restrictions in this game, right? Your stacking is based on your leadership, and it's so heavily linked to that. And that works really well for land movement. It doesn't really work for this naval transport type stuff. Like, you have to juggle a land move with a naval move, which you could do in War and Peace because it's an I go, you a go game, pure and simple. Whereas this has this weird chit pull thing. Anyway, there are definitely some rough edges when you get away from what we've been mainly playing, which is the land game. But yeah. And then, also in War and Peace, there's no stacking limitation. You could build as big a force as you like. But a force that's more than a couple of strength points, I don't remember if it's 1, 2, or 3 that's safe, has to check attrition in War and Peace. So anytime you have a fairly large stack, you're making attrition checks at the end of your movement. And it doesn't really feel very realistic. This feels a lot more realistic on the attrition checks, I think. At least so far. We'll see how Russia goes, But I just feel like different things are being abstracted. But then on top of that, you've got like these horrible rules for this that it's not even discernible how they're supposed to be applied. And, the naval transport is one of those examples. Anyway, one more turn this year. And again, there's rules like the spring interphase, where it says you get something in the next spring interphase. Every turn has a spring interphase. Do they mean the one in spring or not? And like, I had that whole debate before. Well, we've decided whenever they say spring interphase, they mean spring, but not all of these, some of these steps are done every turn that are within the spring interphase. It's just, and again, maybe these other rules that incorporated the errata, and maybe that's all they did is incorporate the errata that's in existence, but maybe they were making some guesswork, just like I have to. I don't understand life, like 5 hours just more or less disappeared. I wasn't asleep, just fucking around and stuff. I got no idea. It's just like time just disappears on me like that. Okay. Well, I guess it's the winter turn, and I might as well get a little bit. I think it was around 7 or 8 when I was up here last. And now it's like 2:45. And I'm like, what the fuck happened all the time? I just go down rabbit holes of existence. Okay. Oh, I have these here. I think, yeah. So I guess I have the diplomacy shot. It doesn't terribly feel like there's much to do. The Austrians will go for Denmark again, which they do not get. The French have a shit ton of money. I don't know if the Danes are all that interesting to me. Like the Poles have a fairly large army, so and a good one, so they were kind of intriguing to try to bring into play. But I have a +1 on Denmark. Not on Sweden. Odd. Sweden, France in other games generally has an advantage to getting them. Yeah. I mean, I might as well roll for Denmark. Do I want to spend money? My money's going to go away if I don't blow it now. So I'll spend $2 for an extra one, I guess. I don't know. That leaves me plenty if I want to play. Although, I was at 7, so I can't like rebuild an army or something like that if I had one to rebuild. So that gives me a +2, I think. That seems pretty low. Not good enough. Okay. And I think the next thing I do is the initiative pool. Again, this scenario has the 1 in 6 chance for Prussia leaving every spring interphase. Spring interphase has to mean one thing or the other. It's constantly being referred to. It's not clear whether it's every turn or every spring. And I've got arguments for either direction. Coalition moved last, so a coalition marker can't be played. First counter can't be a winter quarters, so we've got an Empire land 4. I don't know if I have an army. I don't know if I have a force that has a 4 initiative. Okay, those are not Prussia. Those are not French. Here we go, Hesse, with the Army of Germany, which actually exists. It's not in good shape. I probably need to fall back with that. And I think that's the only thing I have that's got a 4 quality leader. Oh, wait. I have reinforcements. I can put leaders on the map. And I think everybody is interested in doing that. I'm having a hard time remembering the reinforcement phase and stuff like that. That big 4-point thing only allows me to move the one army, the Army of Germany. I pull it back from Strasbourg to Metz. The reason being, if things open up here, my Army of Germany is just too weak, and I can't bring anything else, move anything else. I did commit the leader. I got this Keebler guy, who's a pretty good leader as a corps leader. But if I make him an army leader, he's only got a 3 initiative. He's still got the 2 combat value, but I'm going to put him over here with whatever, the Italian army, because I'm a little worried about this coming down and beating me. Although we're coming up on winter, so not much should happen. I'm too tired to play. That's pretty obvious. I should have been sleeping, and now I think I'll try to take another nap. Probably end up oversleeping and missing raid by, my raid switch over. But if I start taking naps in the late afternoon or whatever, that might become easier. I just don't fucking know. I don't know how to cope. Like, I start doing something, and it just like, I can't stop. And this happens with reading, it happens with everything. It doesn't happen with gaming anymore. It used to. I managed to get a couple hours sleep here and there. This is kind of interesting. So I went and looked at the partitions of Poland. First partition's done. Okay, no big deal. Before this scenario. 1793 is where the second partition happened. And that gives things like Danzig and I don't know. I didn't look up everything there. Now Russia was a big part of that, but Austria was fighting the Ottomans, all kind of stuff like that. Meanwhile, in this game, okay, look, the Austrians don't have their full army built, right? They can build it in 93, but or most of it by 93. The Russians aren't in the game, but it does feel a little weird to have this major war going on over here. And I'm pretty sure the Empires in Arms revolutionary scenario allows for that war, right? During this scenario, it feels like I should be seeing the power politics that I expect to see in the 1805 campaign going on, where nations are, you know, tied down in this stuff. The next one is in 1795, and the Poles basically rise up and revolt. So I don't think it's terribly wrong for the Poles to be here. And actually, I wonder if, like, all the force pools should even be available to all the nations. You know, we've got this major war between the Ottomans, the Poles, and the Austro-Russian alliance going on, you know, at some earlier point. I'm left with the feeling that this scenario is like so revolutionary centric. Now, it's an interesting, you know, I'm going to say introductory scenario, but there's tons of introductory scenarios. If it weren't for the fact that the fucking counters are unreadable, we'd be doing, you know, we'd have done an introductory scenario instead, because I knew this game would require a fair amount. But anyway, not going to play right away because, like I said, I think I said, I managed to get a couple hours of sleep, and now I'm like stuck in having to do raid stuff. I basically held all my raid goodies that I could for now. Kind of lucky that I woke up for it, but that tends to happen. It is about 6 a.m. I'm going to pull a few more chits, I guess. I'm trying to convince myself to be able to do something today. The problem, of course, is I only had a couple hours of sleep in the nighttime period. I didn't get much. I didn't get any, really. I got a couple hours at some point during the day yesterday, I guess. So I'm not really getting a lot of sleep, but I'd like to, I don't know, maybe walk out to get at least some of the stuff I need for my toilet. Anyhow, I did check one other thing, which was the Spanish uniforms were bothering me. They're line units dressed in white. So we're talking something, you know, kind of like the Royalist French, which kind of makes sense because you're talking about Bourbon on both sides at that point. And the Habsburgs also had a very pale uniform color, if I recall correctly. You know, there's some of you who are probably into minis and whatnot, and were just kind of laughing at me about my yellow. There's nothing yellow that I saw. There's some weird units and stuff that have things like that. But yeah, I mean, like officers are in blue and just all kind of guards are too and stuff. All kind of weird stuff that like kind of seems hard to tell the troops apart. I always think about each nation having its own very specific color. But it's just not the case. Anyway, let's start drawing. Nothing to do with the chit cup. Look, the umpire drew a land chit. There's a fair amount of chits in the cup, but not a huge amount. One winter quarter ends this. And all the Empire land chits don't count anymore. So with one of them out, with an Empire land in place, that means there's 4 chits out of the cup, and 1 draw could end it. So, you know, it is not that safe. Anyway, I got a Coalition 3, which doesn't mean a lot of units are going to be able to move, but the important ones will. Bavarians do an amazing job given how small they are. They had a big siege, like a +3 marker already on Baden. Took a couple of rolls to get it, but then they were also able to take Strasbourg here. And so, you know, they're pushing their supply line forward, and they've really kind of got the French positioning on the ropes at this point. There's something funny about the siege markers. And again, there's so much in this game that I'm not sure what to trust, what not to, right? If we take a look at the siege rolls, let's get to them here. A siege attempt can be executed. A siege is not a battle. You can continue movement. You can make several attempts. Delay siege, you must have as many hexes. What's not clear is when you place the siege 0 marker, okay? I think I started out doing it right, and now I'm doing it wrong and gave the besieger a bonus. Because every time you get basically any result on the siege table, except for a repulse, you get an additional siege level. Well, one would think that a 0 is what you place first, but that doesn't really serve any purpose. A siege 0 does you absolutely nothing in the game, right? And as soon as you move into the hex, you get a siege attempt. So I think actually after you make that roll, you get the siege 0, which means you're not going to get any modifiers for the second time you do a siege. It feels like these counters should be, like the siege 0s just shouldn't exist. But given that they do, and there's no description about when you place a siege 0, I think the first time you increase it from no siege, like after you make the roll, you increase it from no siege marker to a siege 0. So the first 2 rounds of the siege will be without a modifier. Otherwise, the counter mix doesn't even make much sense. Like you have all these siege 0 markers. Sure, they're on the backside of Fortress Destroyeds, and you can make an argument that the Fortress Destroyeds could be all over the fucking place, and therefore, you know, the siege 0s are meaningless counters, but I just don't know. During the winter campaign, which is the important time because the things you capture here count, right? So taking Baden was big. Now, Teschen, our Archduke Charles, I guess, manages to take both Mainz and, what is this, Cologne? Within Cleves. Basically taking everything back that the French had managed to succeed in. The French really don't want to bring the Brits in now, right? I am opening up options. This is the German army, and it's moved already. It probably isn't going to do anything, but this army of the north is a real threat. So I probably want to bring reinforcements up from the Prussian army. I'm expending foreign detachments to garrison these things. I think if I get Baden and Palatinate, I can reconstitute the original Baden. If not, it's kind of problematic because this is Austrian captured stuff. This is what's kind of fucked up, right? Austria would probably give Cleves back to the Prussians. Maybe, you know? I mean, the whole piece of like, I don't know. There's definitely a rivalry between the two countries. If you were playing a multiplayer game, they definitely wouldn't. In this particular situation, I just don't think that they would just grant it over. But it's basically a valueless piece of territory in this game. It might end up being of value to Prussia because Prussia might be able to incorporate it into its territory in a way that Austria is almost impossible to manage to do. Well, I bring Hohenlohe and Blücher up to join the army. They were actually able to fit in it, but now I have a big army, bigger than the Army of the North. I push whoever the hell is up here. Thielmann, perhaps. Forward, I got one more big question. Do I want to move Wurmster forward? I think I'm going to hold off on that decision. I might not get the decision, but an advance to hit the Army of Italy, the French Army of Italy with my own Army of Italy, there's not a lot of gain to it. Right now, I've got them blocked off. That's good enough. And the danger, though, is the French will be getting big production. They get, more production than Austria, not by much. But they can put a big army back in the field again and again and again. This is, there's the option somewhere. Now we're looking at France denuded of any territorial gains, right? And they're able to build a pretty damn big force. But at the same time, somewhere in the special rules, somewhere, we have the French are able to, not the levy en masse, that's a card. Must be in here somewhere. Oh, I'm not seeing it. Production and reinforcement. Damn it. Somewhere there's something that allows the French to, call up reserves. Now, they're not going to be able to do it in this scenario. I know that. But I can't fucking find it. But they can put a big enough army without doing that. And there's a big disadvantage to doing it twice. I don't think they're willing to ever do that. Here it is. Maybe it's about money. Call for conscripts. Double its recruitment level, but not cav. And the number of pounds is 1.5. I mean, yes, your army could be that destroyed. And certainly historically it was after Russia and perhaps after Napoleon being in exile or whatever. But it's a tough, it's got to be a tough call that you do not want to make twice. Yeah. Because the second time you do it, you end up dropping their good core to +1 combat values, and you lose your attrition bonus, which I haven't really been using, but definitely seems like a valuable thing. I gotta swap batteries, I'll pull another chip. Boom, that's a year over. Winter quarters came up. All right. Do we have any final attrition? I don't believe so. What are these guys drawing supply from now? Yeah, okay. Just making sure. Because they got cut off from some stuff that could have been supporting them. So yeah, no attrition is happening there in the final, which means we go to the conquests. Now, I was looking up the Baden issue. It's not specifically mentioned, but I'm just going to use reason here and say that Austria would be willing to create a greater Baden to deal with this threat. That would be re-adding the Palatinate to it. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to reintegrate it with the Palatinate. Cleves, yeah, we'll just grab it, It's ours. Cleves is actually, I believe, a state, but I've got it here, but it doesn't have any troops. It's just one of those fucking, it can be incorporated probably into Germany, but it's just one of these, into the Confederation of the Rhine. It's one of these stupid minors that, has no troops. I think the Austrians have to reinstate it as a nation because it's not adjacent to them. So, yeah, it becomes a nation state as well. All right. Anything else exciting happen here? Doesn't look like it. I wished happened, although there seems to be a general rule that if a nation or whatever has a two-step core, Baden only has a one-step core, then it can, we'll get rid of all these markers, it can, it will have a detachment as well. Might have more than one though. But this is important because having to hunt down the force pool, because it could be anywhere, most notably it could be embedded in these armies and whatnot. So so like, hey, Baden just switched sides again. I get the Badenese corps and all their troops and everything, and nothing else. Cleves is now a nation once more, but now it's under Austrian control, and we get rid of this. What's this up here? That looks like part of Berg. Berg has not switched sides. The French were planning on leaving a detachment or whatever to convert Berg. I don't know what it is right now. It is part of Bavaria. Wow. Seriously? That can't be right. I gotta be misreading something. It's part of Bavaria. Wasn't something else part of Bavaria? So Bavaria is over here. Is Thuringia? No. Thuringia is an ally of Austria. No. That's really odd. I mean, I'm guessing it's just the same family owns both. But yeah, that's really, really weird. So at the end of the turn, my feeling is France has, after having a turn which, the first turn wasn't very good for France, but, early revolutionary battles didn't go terribly well for them. Second turn, it felt like they were turning everything around, that they were on their roll, that they were ready to get, to start conquering stuff. Now it's looking ugly. I'm being pushed back. I've lost the territories that I had gained before, and it's going to be really hard to turn this around and end it, and get into a victorious position by the end of 1797. I got 3 more years to collect up basically Italy and the Flanders and Holland, which is a pretty big ask given the situation things are in. We shall see. We shall see. All right, let's load this up.